Greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking, and I am Dewar. And as usual, if you like what you see and hear, give us a like, subscribe. So as part of this year's conversations, we will be speaking to friends and family of past nurses on the island of Montserrat. This is in an effort to remember them and remember the enormous contribution they made to the healthcare of the citizens of Montserrat. So the first nurse that we'll be talking about in this series is Ms. Beverly Dewar. And here to help us remember Beverly is her sister, Anne-Marie Dewar. So welcome, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Dave.
How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Very well.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate you doing this because I feel like, because of all this that has happened on Montserrat, the volcano has happened and scattered Montserratians everywhere. And so these nurses who gave so much are not part of the community to be remembered and taken care of. So, this is my little effort to take care of them.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I know that you and Beverly come from a family, at least some of your family members were involved in healthcare. Your mom was a nurse, your granddad is a very well-known and very famous doctor. So do you think this had any influence on Beverly becoming a nurse?
Oh yes, most definitely. I mean, I often say that that healthcare, medicine, if you like, is the family profession, especially on my mother's side of the family, because as you rightly pointed out, my mother's father was a very well-known surgeon. Mm-hmm. My mother was a nurse. My mother had one sister who was a nurse. Mm-hmm. All my mother's brothers married nurses.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, we often say that nursing is a family profession. And in fact, I remember when we were really young, Beverly and I used to hang around the hospital. Mommy, of course, was the matron of the hospital.
Yes.
And so we lived sort of at the edge of the hospital compound in the matron's house. But we were so fascinated with nurses and nursing, and we made great friends among nurses. In fact, all the staff of the hospital, these were the strong women who raised us. Huh? And even the men, the orderlies and the ambulance drivers and the men who worked in the pharmacy and all of them, they took us under their wing and were very careful to make sure that Matron Dewar's daughters were well brought up and, had good manners and were polite and so on. But we used to hang around the children's ward. We absolutely love the whole idea of caring children. So, and I'm sure that even sometimes we would dress up in white dresses, and pretend to be nurses. Both of us, in fact, wanted to be nurses when we were young. I moved out of that in my teens. But Beverly just, kept that.
Yeah.
And I can't ever recall Beverly saying that she wanted to be anything other than a nurse.
That's awesome, awesome. When I hear people speak of Beverly, when I see things that are written about her, people speak very highly of her, of her compassion and her empathy and stuff like that. What do you think, though, as her sister, what do you think was the biggest quality about Beverly that endeared her to so many people?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. She was thoroughly professional. Beverly, if you, I think the word professional really was written around Beverly. She believed in doing things in a particular way. And she believed that everybody needed to be treated treated in that particular way. She believed that there was a minimum level of respect and compassion. And that's the other word that I think was wrapped up with her. You know, there were so many instances that I came across with Beverly, not just in nursing care, but in caring for people in general. Beverly's phone, her home was an open door. You know, people would seek her on the weekends. She would not hesitate if it was necessary for her to go out on a time when she was not due to be there. Oh, she later on she ran a club for young people because she really was interested in their development and their sense of worth in terms of their own health care. And I remember, if I can just skip to, it probably was about 2 weeks before she died. No, Beverly was very ill. And she just generally always thought about other people as well. And I remember one of her friends became ill, and nobody quite understood what it was. At least I don't know quite what it was. But she reached out to Beverly, and Beverly was not well herself. And Beverly got out of her sick bed and went to this person's home and saw her into hospital and saw that her son had somebody to take care of them. And this was probably about 2 weeks before Beverly died herself.
Wow.
And this is one of the things that has stuck in my mind, you know, has just stuck with me. It's the compassion that she had.
Yeah.
I can tell you that she was a most wonderful sister to have. And professionalism reached to me even. You know, I learned, and I'm an older sister, but I learned a lot about professionalism and doing things right the first time from Beverly. You know, doing it right the first time so that you don't have to go back and correct mistakes later on, because some of those mistakes can have disastrous consequences.
Yes.
If you're in healthcare, or if you're dealing with somebody who has, you know, mental worries, things, I don't mean that they're necessarily mentally ill.
Yeah.
Things which emotionally and mentally are dragging them down, you know. And Beverly recognized that it's important to do things right the first time. And I learned a lot about that from her.
Wow. I didn't, you know, of course, you know, I knew Beverly as a teenager. I never knew her. I never worked with her. I knew her as a nurse, but from everything that I read and hear, you know, people hold her in such high esteem. And I know she worked in Montserrat. She was a nurse, she was a midwife, and then she did something else in Montserrat. I don't quite remember what.
Yes, well, she trained in Barbados and in London. She came back to Montserrat. I think somewhere around 1994 or so, Beverly left nursing and went to become executive director of the family planning. It was the Montserrat Family Planning Association. She changed the name to Family Life Services because she really wanted to, you know, emphasize that family planning was not just about contraception, but it really had to do with people's lifestyles and the choices people make. And she was very concerned, particularly about teenage pregnancy, because there were quite a number of, and I'm not talking about 19-year-olds necessarily. She was very concerned about the younger teenagers who, you know, had not properly developed themselves either.
Yes.
As well, I mean, right throughout teenage, because most of those were not married,
Mm-hmm.
did not have the sort of support networks. So she was very, very concerned about them. And she started an under 20 club, under
Okay.
20 club, which both males and females joined. And it became a very vibrant club, which helped the young people to think through life choices and suggested alternatives, suggested ways of strengthening their own sense of self and sense of
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
enabling them to think about the future that they could have and to pursue their dreams.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was really giving them a chance to just think beyond the confines of their own lives
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how their lives could be enhanced and enriched, and giving them the opportunity to to just have a vision for themselves, to create a greater sense of purpose and self-awareness. And there's several young people who still, well, they're not as young now, or highly about it up to now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Hmm. And I know that there's no one who can forget. If you ever met Beverly, if you think about her, there's nobody who can forget her smile.
That's
Her
true.
smile. If the minute you say, her name comes up, the smile is the first thing that comes to my mind anyway. But I do know that she involved herself, as you say, in other community efforts as well. I know that she sang, as you do.
Yes.
Right? And that she, when she moved to England, she did create a group, if I remember correctly.
To England, um, together with her fiance Howard and a few other Montserratians. Um, she formed a group called the Aliogana Singers. They're still in existence today. They're still performing. And she worked very hard. Now the thing is, that Beverly had been diagnosed with breast cancer in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
She moved to London because this was the height of the volcanic crisis as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And she moved to London, I think somewhere around 1998. And so she formed the Aliogana Singers. And one of the things that Beverly wanted to do was to bring the Aliogana Singers to Montserrat as a group and to perform here, just to sort of make the links, renew the community links, etc. And to perhaps it was a sense of giving the folk in London, the group members in London, the opportunity to come back home as a group and to make a contribution. So this she did in December of 2000. And while she was here, I mean, she did lots of, she expended a lot of effort in fundraising. She would get up in the mornings and go to the markets and sell, sort of jumble sale, garage sales kind of things to help raise funds. And I mean, we're talking about, late autumn, winter coming on,
Yes, yes.
But she brought the group home, and they just wowed audiences here. They were a wonderful group. They still are. And they did a lovely set of concerts here in the schools, and they did, concerts to general audiences and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And they went back in January 2001. And the thing is that she caught a cold, which she didn't get over. It really wore her system down, etc. So she was not very well. And I think by then the cancer had you know, it just got, situation had got a bit worse for her. We all think that she knew. We think that she knew, you know, but she so wanted to come home. Beverly loved Montserrat with a passion. And unfortunately, she passed on the 25th of February, 2001, you know, just just a little over a month after she
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was so awesome that she was able to do something like that, that she so wanted to do.
It was something off her bucket list ticked off. She spoke nonstop about it. She was very, very keen to do it. And I'm so glad that she had the opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, that's on my, so, you know, just listening to you speak of Beverly, you know, it gives me all kinds of warm feelings, I have to tell you. It gives me all kinds of warm feelings. And I'm thinking what it just occurred to me as you're talking. Now we are, they're talking about a new facility, a new hospital, not necessarily just Beverly, but do you think there's a way? Do you think there's a way that we can somehow remember all of these nurses who were so, who laid such foundations back in the day in this new facility? I would love to take them in that new facility.
Yeah, I think ways to do it. We have my grandfather was, you know, quite an important person in terms of healthcare in Montserrat. And I don't mean that he was more important than anybody else, but I do mean that people have regarded him in a very special way. And they have hung, there's a photograph of him hung up. And I do think that even in means of photographs, you know, of some of these nurses in some particular, maybe a waiting area or something. And as people can get the history of these people, you know, because there are so many nurses. I think when I was young, there were people like Nurse Francis, Nurse Morgan, you know, Nurse Ince, Nurse White. There were, oh my goodness, Nurse Catherine Bazzi. There were so many outstanding nurses who served at Glendon Hospital. And I mean, it's hard to call names because even as I talk, there's so many others.
They're more coming back, yes.
You know? And it would be exceptional. We have Nurse Cooper, who is still alive. And there are so many nurses, both for the hospital and who served a lot of them in the districts, who are household names today, but unfortunately among people of our age.
Exactly.
Really have very little knowledge of who these people
are.
You know, and so I think it's really, really important. There are several nurses who have been mentioned in, you know, in various ways. There's some who've been given accolades, etc. But I think that something needs to be done, and I agree with you. In the new hospital, pull together some of these nurses and doctors of the past who have really built the foundation of care in Montserrat.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I absolutely agree with you there. And you know, my age is beginning to catch up with me because I thought of something to ask you as you were talking. It's gone. And it is gone. But anyway, so Anne-Marie, I don't know how to thank you for this. I appreciate just the fact that you're talking to me about Beverly, remembering her, but also helping me to kick off this series about Montserrat nurses and nurses in Montserrat who have done so much, because I really don't want them to be forgotten. So thank you so much. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you to do before we go. If you would just hold up a picture of Beverly so people can see her.
Well, I have one here. here, which has her in sort of side view.
Yes, yes,
But this is my beloved sister,
yes,
Beverly
indeed.
Dewar.
Yes, Beverly Joy.
Beverly Joy, yes. And you know, she lived out her life, one of joy. There was a friend actually who used to call her Joy Dewar. I like to think because she radiated so much joy and she brought a lot of joy to people.
Yeah.
We often talk about persons of blessed memory when we are referring to people who have passed, but Beverly truly is of blessed memory. I know probably I'm a little bit biased in this, but she was just such a remarkable person. She was, you know, she filled every day around her with joy. And she also lived her life as one full of joy. And so there's no name that reflects her, you know, better than the joy. Of course, most people would know her as Beverly or Bev.
Yeah.
Joy was what Beverly was all about, and bringing joy to people. You know, she had so many godchildren.
Ah.
And I lost count after 10. I lost count. And they were not just godchildren
Not
only.
just in name.
She remembered birthdays, she remembered Christmas, she asked about them, inquired about them, you know. And there were people from the under 20s club who still, you know, talk about her, who still talk about her in such passionate terms and the difference that she made in
Yes.
their lives at a time when they were just struggling to find themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I like to think that her memory truly is blessed.
On that note, I can't think of a higher note on which to end this conversation. Thank you so very much, Anne Marie.
And
Thank
thank you
you
for
so
having
much.
me. Thank you. Thank you.